The only difference is that in Japan you make more money than what you make in Mexico. You could feel a little bit lonely sometimes, and this goes especially for people who are maybe planning to come to Japan.
What's your name?
My name is Waldir Núñez. I am originally from Mexico, but currently I live in England. I used to live in Japan for 2 years, 2 years and a half around. Originally I came here to study, but then I got a job, and yeah, I work here for a year and a half around.
You worked in Japan.
I worked in Japan, in Tokyo specifically, yes.
You were a salaryman.
I was a salaryman, yeah. It's actually a fun word because, so when I first came as a student, you would go out. I used to study in Takadanobaba. It's really close to Shinjuku, and you would go to Shinjuku on a Friday night, and you'll see all these people wearing suits. And then finally, the first time I heard the word salaryman, I was very confused. But then you realize it's just all these people that go out of the office, and they go out, they drink beer, and they stay all night. And I eventually became one of them. So yeah. It's funny.
So what brought you to Japan in the first place?
And I visited Japan as a backpacker. So I came for 2 months, and I realized that I really liked the country. However, I know it's different to come as a tourist and to actually live here. It's completely another world. So back then I thought to myself, maybe one day I would like to be here as a worker or as a student. 2020 we had this emergency worldwide. There was a pandemic. I was working in Mexico as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. Everything got hard, everything got difficult, and then at that point, I kind of got stuck. And then I remembered, a couple of years ago, I wanted to come to Japan. Maybe this is the time. So I saved some money, worked for a year, and then came. So that was it.
How was it like to work as a salaryman, as a Mexican in Tokyo?
I don't know. It was very interesting, the culture shock at the beginning. I used to work as a recruiter. I recruit for the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare industry. Big pharma companies, small, mid-sized range companies. I think the thing that shocked me the most was, sometimes you could work very late, and of course this depends on the industry, right? But sometimes you could find yourself working 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And now with the remote work, even if you're in your house, you get asked to do things, right? I mean, this is my experience. I don't know how it works in other countries, but for some people, Japanese people, work becomes their life. Like there's nothing else, They might have families. I mean, for myself, it was just me. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? Because I didn't have anyone when I get back home. But I imagine a father with 2 kids and then having to work all day and not being able to see their kids might be difficult, yeah.
You mentioned a bit of a culture shock. What was the biggest culture shock when you first arrived in Japan?
This is one of the things that I tell my friends and my family. In Japan, things work. It sounds obvious, it sounds like, what do you mean? But things work. Like, for example, if they tell you, this is the easiest example, if they tell you the train is going to be at 7 p.m. at a certain point, guess what? It's going to be at 7 p.m. at that point. Like, that doesn't change. In other countries, maybe 7:05, 7:10 might arrive late. In Japan, that doesn't happen. Things are on time. In Japan, things are convenient. Like, you go to the train station, you'll find a toilet. Inside the train, you'll find a toilet. The toilets are clean. The toilets are in good condition. But if you go to another countries, I mean, you've been to other countries, there are no toilets outside, and most of the times you have to pay to get access to them. So it's incredible that in Japan, it's just a normal thing, right? So that's a culture shock.
What's the similarity between Mexico and Japan?
You know what? There's one thing. There's this ranking that goes out every year. The countries that work the most hours. It doesn't mean countries that are more productive, just countries that work the most. And it's always Japan and Mexico, either number in the top 5. And what do I mean by they work the most? I think in Japan, I was just mentioned to you at the beginning, you can have a full day of work. You can work like 12 hours, 13 hours. And in Mexico, it's the same. Like people go to work, start at 7 in the morning, and they finish at 10 p.m. And that's the case for a lot of Mexicans. And in Japan, salaryman, for many of them, that's also the case. They go to work at 8, 9, I don't know, and they finish 10, 11. So that's crazy. The only difference is that in Japan, you make more money than what you make in Mexico. But in terms of the time worked, Yeah, that's similar, right? Then you compare to countries in Europe where they work like 6 hours a day, I don't know. And it's like, how do they do it, right? So that's a similarity from both countries, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you still liked or still you like Japan as a
Oh, yeah.
country because there are also upsides.
Yeah,
What are the favorite parts of Japan for you?
I like onsen. I like onsen. So I know some countries in the world have some similar onsen concept, but I think in Japan and some Asian countries have something even more developed. So as we all know, or if you guys don't know, in Japan, coming to an onsen, which is the hot springs, you have to go without clothes, right? So of course for Japanese people this is like an everyday thing. Like you're born, you're 2 years old, you go with your parents, and it's just you're used to this. But just imagine like Kokujin coming from another country, and then suddenly he goes to this hotel, and then oh yeah, there's like a hot spring. Oh yeah, I want to do that. And then you come in, and then you see everyone naked. It's like, what's happening here? Like I don't want to do that. The first time I did that was 10 years ago. And yes, so they told me, no, you don't have a shower. You have to go to a public bath. And I was like, what does that mean? So I went to this public bath, and I had to take a shower with 20 more people and, without clothes, duh, of course. But it was a shocking experience. Like, why?
So you like traveling and you like maybe traveling to onsen places, I understand.
Yes.
What was the most recent onsen trip which is memorable and you maybe recommend to anybody?
That's a good question because, yeah, I just recently came from this amazing place. So Yamanashi is one of the most important prefectures in Japan. It's well known because, well, Mount Fuji is located at this prefecture. And I recently visited this place called Minobu, which is a small town at the other side of Mount Fuji. It's a small town, probably around 15,000 people, right? So it's not too big. And I went to this hotel. It's called Shimobe Hotel. And they had this onsen, which I really liked, not just because they had the usual onsen experience. You go with your yukata, the traditional Japanese robes. They had I would call it outdoors onsen, which is, of course, outside. But they also have a foot bath. So if you don't want to get all wet, you just like take out your shoes and you sit down, chill with a beer or with some matcha or whatever, enjoy the view. It was really, really good. And also, one of the things that I really like is that they have different onsen with different temperatures. They have 41 degrees, 43 degrees, they have 35 degrees. So you get to pick which one you want to experience, right? Oh my God, I want to go to an onsen now that I'm thinking about that.
Was it crowded? Because nowadays a lot of onsen places are very crowded in Japan.
You know what? It wasn't that crowded, actually. I mean, you could see the place is popular because you could see people. I mean, it wasn't empty. But, there are some spots in Japan which are overpopulated, I would say, because they're close to Tokyo, so it's easy to get them. But it's also they have had all this exposure. I would say, for example, Hakone, right? It's really nice. I've been there, but especially in like high season, could get really crowded. Not saying it's a bad thing, but if you want to experience something more relaxing, if you want to experience something that is equally good, but you won't have to make big queues to get into a place, Minobu is really good. It's easy to get there. We just took a bus from Shinjuku, the station right here. 4 hours, got there directly. We didn't have to do any changes, any transitions. And it was amazing. It was really good, to be honest.
You mentioned a bit about your Japanese experience, and I know that you are kind of fluent in Japanese.
Oh.
How did you learn Japanese, or how are you studying? How have you been studying Japanese?
So when I first came to Japan, I was studying at this Japanese language school. That's how I got my student visa, right? But I think, and this is directed to all the people who want to learn Japanese, right? I'm still struggling a little bit. I can say I speak better, much better than when I first got here. After the 6 months, I had the chance to get a job in Japan, so I transitioned. I didn't go to school anymore. But in my office, I was working with people from all nationalities, but especially Japanese, because this is Japan. And I think I learned more from my work by speaking Japanese in my office than I learned from school. So you just have to talk. And again, if you're learning Japanese and you consider yourself introvert, you consider yourself, yeah, but I don't want to go out, talk to people, you might have to reconsider, because that's, I would say, the fastest, easiest, and most productive way to learn Japanese. Just go outside and make friends, right?
I see. So you speak Spanish as a native language,
That's
and
right, yeah.
you're very fluent in English. Do you speak also? How many languages do you speak?
So Spanish, as you mentioned, my native language. I speak English. I had the opportunity to live in Thailand for a couple more than 3 years, 4 years. So I'm fluent in Thai. I would say Japanese, but I'm still in the middle, right? I did the N4, so I mean it's not zero, but it's not definitely a fluent.
Do you have any favorite Japanese word?
I have a couple, but I do have one, and you're gonna say I'm very basic, but I don't care because I really like this word. I like itadakimasu. When you hear itadakimasu, it means that you're gonna eat. So what's not to like? You know, you're just gonna, you go to a restaurant, you order something, you know, you're having fun with your friends, your family, your partner, whoever, and then finally the food arrives. And what do you say, amigo? Itadakimasu. So it's time to eat. Yeah. So how can I not like that word? I would say that's my favorite Japanese word for real. So itadakimasu.
No.
Yeah.
All right, that was pretty much it from my side.
Thank you.
If you have any other things to share, any specific stories you'd like to talk about?
I guess it depends on the person. You know, we'll come to Japan. Some people come with expectations. As myself, I came expecting nothing. I came just, okay, well, this is a new stage of my life. Let's see what happens. And so far, I've had an amazing experience. As I mentioned to you now, sadly, I don't live here anymore, but hopefully in the future, I'm trying to get back. But it could be difficult. I mean, you could feel a little bit lonely sometimes, and this goes especially for people who are maybe planning to come to Japan. To make Japanese friends could be a little bit tough, but it's just consistency. Like, go out, you know, there's these places like language exchange cafes, you know, you'll find a couple of them where some Japanese people want to learn, in my case, Spanish, or I don't know, English, French, German. And then in exchange, they'll teach you Japanese. So those are amazing places to make friends, right? And I mean, another suggestion that, to be honest, it works. You know, there are some apps, as you know, that you can download. I mean, just be careful with those because you never know who you might encounter. But I have some friends who, you know, have made friends or even, you know, found a partner through these apps also. But again, this is with cautious, right? Just be careful. Just go out and talk to people. That's what works the best. So yeah.
All right, Waldir,
Amigo.
thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Really appreciate your time, and hope this helps people to, you know, to experience Japan. And that's it.
Absolutely.
Amigo.
All right, thank you.
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
いや、よろしく。